just watching
goodness, he's
UFC,
hurt.
playing UFC, and you think to yourself, man, it sure would be nice to be part of that. I mean, you get to travel the world, you get to make that money, you get to do some of that cool stuff that the Mystic Mac did. But the harsh reality is that it's really low to get there. As in, dying to a lightning strike or a high school ranked basketball player joining the NBA. But you may be asking, how would you ever figure out the chances to make it? I mean, there's so many people around the world, and it's hard to find exact numbers nowadays. Well, my precious viewer, my first step into getting there was to figure out how many amateur fighters there are right now at the moment. The amateur level in MMA is the first step into becoming a pro fighter. And honestly, it's very hard to figure that out too, because a lot of the amateur fights right now, and even the amateur fights back then when MMA was first around, weren't really sanctioned and nothing was kept in the books. So after some time of trying to look for a number, I gave up. But then I stumbled upon a website, Tapology, and it had a contact button, so maybe I could get an answer. As I typed my answers, I hoped to get something that I wanted. Spoiler alert, I don't really get into that. You know, I guess they do help a little bit, but whatever. 11 minutes later, yours truly responded. Hello, we have 319,000 fighters in our database with at least one professional or amateur MMA fight, and we have 2,528 fighters in our database with at least one completed UFC fight. We won't have any more time to do any more detailed analysis than this for you. Best of luck. I was slapped with two numbers: 319,000 fighters with at least one professional or amateur MMA fight, and 2,528 fighters that have competed in at least one UFC fight since 1993. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I just need more information. So I proceeded to beg Greg for some more answers. I got my response another 11 minutes later, and I was met with this pretty much in his short words: figure it out and fuck off. So now what? Greg doesn't want to cooperate. I mean, why would he? I mean, he probably has way more important stuff to do than try to satisfy my needs. I mean, he did tell me some important stuff to search up the roster size, but I didn't really want to go through all of that. But I did anyways, and I just kept losing count over and over again. I mean, there just wasn't any showing of the active and non-active fighters, and I just gave up. 49. Wait, hold on. I thought that the locked characters were the guys that already retired. I mean, why is Robbie Lawler here? He retired a while ago, and oh shit, I lost count. So I went to a source that was kind of frowned upon, but not really. And I found that the active number of UFC fighters today is 608. And some of you guys may be wondering when it was last updated. Boom, today. So at this moment, I only have 3 numbers, but I don't really know what to do with those numbers at the moment. So what did I do? Beg some more. Ask Greg. Hello, Greg. I hope you're doing amazing. I've calculated the number, but I think it could be a more exact estimate. I didn't even calculate the number. I'm just capping out of my ass. If you could please answer these 2 questions, thank you. 1, does people in the UFC, like, man, yeah, this guy was right. This guy said I had TikTok brain rot pronunciation. I guess he is right. My grammar is dog shit. That have made it include Pride fighters and WC fighters that never made it to the UFC. 2, is there any way of you knowing how many active pro MMA fighters there are right now at the moment? I'm so sorry to bother again, but I just want this to be very accurate. Have a great day. 15 minutes later, I got slapped in the face with this. I kind of already knew this was gonna happen, but it didn't hurt to ask again, right? So now what? I can't get the numbers that I wanted. How am I gonna get this number? And I thought of giving up and all of the haters. And then I thought about this guy. And then I saw this other guy's comment. And then I saw this comment. Your presentation is unbearable, 6 out of 10. Well, actually, 2 out of 10 is a stretch completely. And these last 2 comments gave me an idea. Fractions and proportions. So what I was gonna do next is that I was gonna follow the same decrease as all-time UFC fighters, the same decrease to find active pro and amateur MMA fighters. Now, I know making it to the UFC was way different back then, but I'm gonna be using a generalized estimate. Now, I know that there is a mix of 319,000 pro fighters and amateur fighters on the database from all time. And I also know that there's 2,528 fighters in the UFC all time, and that there's 608 active fighters in the UFC. So I placed all-time UFC fighters and all-time pro MMA and amateur MMA fighters, and I followed the decrease of all-time professional UFC fighters toward active fighters, and I just followed the same decrease, which was 75.95%. And I did the same to the all-time pro and amateur MMA fighters toward active pro and amateur MMA fighters. So I got 78,362, and I tell Greg, and he responds in the most exciting way possible. Okay. So then once I got this number, I needed to calculate how many amateur fighters and pro fighters are part of the 78,362. And one of the ideas I came across was running a script on Tapology, but it was against terms and conditions, so I couldn't do that. And if I truly wanted to find all the amateur and all pro fighters, I would have to go through the 78,362 fighters, and I ain't doing all that. So I did some more research outside Tapology, and ChatGPT gave me an estimate 1 to 5% using all of these sources, and I couldn't find any more valid sources. But even if I I were to use 5% on 78,362, then the number of pro fighters would be 3,918. And obviously with all the big promotions going on and all the smaller ones, the number is not even true. So I found a bigger sample size. It's reasonable that there's around 200,000 to 500,000 amateur MMA fighters. Getting these numbers through these sources, but at the same time I wasn't happy with just that estimate. I wanted to get it from the source, not some chat GPT. So what did I do? I emailed the IMMAF organization and I sent a DM to the president, Cardiff Brown, on Instagram. I also texted the guy under the statistics, and to my surprise, none of them responded, and it's been 2 days. I also emailed some other MMA federations, but to my surprise, no reaction. And some of you guys may want me to wait, but honestly, I don't want to wait for some number, so I don't really give a at this point. So I'm gonna go with 250,000 amateur MMA fighters. So using this new sample size, I calculated 608 out of 250,000, and I got 0.24%, which are the chances of making it to the UFC as an amateur fighter, which could also just be a loss or a win on the Contender Series, a match on Road to UFC, a match on the Ultimate Fighter, or a match in the UFC. That's not even becoming a ranked contender or a champion or even a double champion at that. Take that number though with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'm sure that there's more of an exact number than 250,000 active amateur MMA fighters. I'm sure people would be able to get a more accurate percentage if scraping the websites weren't against TOS. Hopefully after this video I'm able to make a more accurate estimate, because hopefully one of the officials might see this video and they might actually reach out and help me. But the next time that you see somebody on the Contender Series or their first fight in the UFC or the Ultimate Fighter or whatever, and you see them getting finished in the worst possible way, just know that that fighter busted their ass to be less than 1%. And I hope you guys learned something in this video, and I appreciate you guys in the support in the last video, although there were just some comments on the last video that, you know what, whatever. If this video gets 100 likes, I'll make a continuation of the probability of a UFC fighter becoming a world champion. Click this video if you like this one. Well, you probably won't, but anyways, until next time, see y'all boys in